Are you familiar with a lot of conspiracies? Well, no matter how familiar you are, there are literally hundreds more that you have no idea about. So I'm super excited to be talking to you about the conspiracy iceberg. For those of you who are unfamiliar, the conspiracy iceberg has hundreds of conspiracies organized into different tiers. The deeper you go, the darker the conspiracies, and the higher the chance that you will learn information that will change your perception of everything permanently. Number 5 on the skyline level is sacred geometry. Starting out with the top layer of the iceberg, the least scary layer, I have selected the topic of sacred geometry. Sacred geometry is a captivating and mystical concept that explores the hidden patterns, mathematical proportions, and symbolic meanings found within the natural world and ancient architecture. It's a fascinating blend of mathematics, spirituality, and art, which has fascinated thinkers, artists, and mystics for centuries. At its core, sacred geometry circulates around the idea that certain geometric shapes and ratios are embedded with a sense of divinity, connecting the physical and spiritual realms. One of the most prominent and universally recognized symbols in sacred geometry is the flower of life, a complex, symmetrical pattern formed by interlocking circles. It's believed to represent the cycle of creation and the fundamental structure of the universe. The golden ratio, often denoted by the Greek letter phi, is another popular and vital element within the realm of sacred geometry. This number, approximately equal to 1.618, appears in numerous natural phenomena, from seashells to sunflowers, and even in the Parthenon in ancient Greece. It's thought to convey balance, harmony, and aesthetic perfection. Aw, they're describing me. The relationship between numbers and geometry is a key focus on this discipline and belief. For example, the Fibonacci sequence, a series of numbers in which each number is the sum of two preceding ones, is very closely tied to sacred geometry. When these numbers are plotted as rectangles or curves, they create the golden spiral, which can be found throughout the natural world in the growth patterns of plants, in animals, and even in space. Ancient cultures worldwide incorporated sacred geometry into their architecture, religious symbols, and art. The Egyptians used the mathematics of geometry to construct the pyramids, while the Chinese incorporated sacred geometry into their traditional feng shui principles. In Europe, cathedrals and churches often featured geometric designs with proportions to inspire a sense of awe and connection with the divine. Number 4. Surface level. The 23 Enigma. The 23 Enigma is a mind-boggling and kind of bizarre belief that centers around the number 23's uncanny significance in various aspects of life. This peculiar theory suggests that the number 23 holds a mystical and pervasive influence on world events, occurrences, and even on personal experiences. While it may sound like an outlandish notion, the 23 Enigma has managed to increase its proof of plausibility over the years. It's captured the imaginations of many theorists and enthusiasts of the mystical. The basic idea of the 23 Enigma gained prominence largely thanks to the film The Number 23. In the movie, the protagonist becomes obsessed with the number 23 and starts seeing it everywhere, leading to a debilitating spiral of paranoia and conspiracy. The film was a fictional thriller, but it drew inspiration from real-life anecdotes that fueled the 23 Enigma conspiracy. One of the most well-known instances of the 23 Enigma is the infamous 23-5 incident involving the writer William S. Burroughs. Burroughs believed that the number 23 had an unusual grip on his life, as he frequently encountered it in wildly unexpected places. The theory goes that many significant historical events, coincidences, and disasters are all somehow able to be traced back to the number 23. Supporters of this belief argue that the number's recurrence in history can't just be a mere chance. Some enthusiasts maintain that it's a mystical and hidden code, while others view it as an amusing and mind-bending thought experiment. The appeal of the 23 Enigma may lie in its capacity to make the mundane seem extraordinary, as proponents often interpret everyday occurrences through the lens of this cryptic number. I mean, we are in 2023, and let's be honest, this has not been a normal year for anyone. Whether you view it as an intriguing puzzle or an eccentric belief system, it reminds us of the tendency we all have to seek patterns and connections, even in the most unlikely places. So, next time you spot the number 23 in your daily life, maybe take some extra caution. You never know what events may follow.
Number 3. The 9th planet. Now this one's a fun conspiracy because it's totally out there. All the way up in the solar system. This conspiracy is of the doomsday variety, saying that there's a hypothetical 9th planet out there that's just waiting at the edge of the solar system, waiting to cause trouble as it poses a grave threat to humanity and the Earth as a whole. This celestial body of destruction is allegedly supposed to hurl all sorts of nasty asteroids and comets our way, like a sentient malevolent force of evil, and it's gonna pummel our planet with all these space rocks, and I think in the next Avengers movie they're gonna take it down. Now this alleged 9th planet is the focus of a larger, pretty well documented conspiracy theory unofficially called the Nibiru Cataclysm. and let me do my best to parse this one for you. A Wisconsinite named Nancy Leader claims that as a young girl, she was contacted by an alien race called the Zetans, who, not to discredit her, I'm pretty sure was the alien race from the Fallout 3 DLC that took place in space, but whatever. Leader claims that the Zetans contacted her when she was young and implanted her with an intergalactic communication system, and throughout the 90s, Leader would preach the good word about the Zetans, but also to warn people about an incoming danger from Planet X, this unknown ninth planet beyond Neptune that was going to make its way to Earth and end all civilization. Now, although it was initially named Planet X, it eventually caught the name Nibiru, referencing these ancient Mesopotamian religious texts referring to a mythical giant planet called Nibiru or Marduk that passes by Earth every 3,600 years, bringing its sentient beings closer to humanity, with some people believing these beings are celestial gods. Whew, that's a whole lot of words. So what about this wild theory is true? Well, NASA has been researching the possibility of a ninth planet for years and years, as there is some reasonable speculation that there could be something inside our solar system just outside of Neptune we haven't seen. However, no danger of this mystery planet hurling any comets at us, and whether or not it's carrying a race of hyper-intelligent Satans who are going to destroy us all remains to be seen. It's worth noting that as part of Leader's conspiracy, she's alleged the Earth would have been destroyed 3 times now, but it keeps getting delayed. So hey, better late than never, right? Number 2. Secret life on Mars. In 1971, British philosopher David Bowie posed a question, asking, is there life on Mars? He also made some pretty bold claims about spiders on Mars and their guitar playing prowess. Since then, it's a question that's raged in the back of our minds. Is there something waiting for us out on the red planet? One of the first bits of kindling for this fire of conspiracy was in 1976. A photo released from the Viking 1 and Viking 2 orbiters across Mars showed what looked like an almost perfectly sculpted depiction of a human being's face on the surface of Mars. I mean, look at it, it's downright uncanny. A nose, a mouth, eyes, it looks exactly like a person. This led to some wild theorizing that there was something intelligent, alive on Mars that had made contact with humanity, or perhaps even looked like humans, and had sculpted this effigy in clear view of our cameras in hopes to make contact, or perhaps some ancient civilization built it, like that guy on the History Channel was always doing this. Aliens. I don't know his name. Unfortunately for all, later photos of the rock formation would show that, well, it was just a big rock, and the face on Mars was not much more than a mix of an optical illusion and the human brain's desire to see patterns that aren't there. Sorry. This wouldn't be the only time something like this happened, though. In 2008, a similar phenomenon would be recorded, and everybody's heart would race when the Opportunity rover brought back a photo of what looked like a human woman on Mars, or quite honestly Bigfoot, because what I see here is Bigfoot. Unfortunately, similar to the face on Mars, this is just a rock formation taken at just the right angle with the light hitting it just the right way to trick our eyes. Another phenomenon known as the spiders from Mars, unrelated to David Bowie, is present on Mars, where giant black patterns appear on the surface looking like humongous spiders or webs, leading some to believe this could be the proof of Martians. But these were eventually discovered to just be remnants of gas that had cracked through ice on Mars's surface. So until the CEO of Twitter can get that rocket working and get somebody up there, seems like we've still got a way to go before we find that life on Mars. Sorry, Bowie. Number 1, the moon landing. Right, well, I'm sorry to make you wait so long for it, but I gotta keep you to the end of the video somehow. I wanted to save the best for last and cap it off with the most famous NASA conspiracy, and maybe one of the most famous conspiracy theories of all time. The moon landing didn't happen. Total fake, right? That's it. That's the video. Never happened. Oh, okay. You want me to talk about it? I can do that. Yeah, no worries. Let's dissect it a little bit then. So, the biggest arguments for the moon landing being totally fake is that there's no stars in the sky in the photos, the US flag is flowing as if it's blowing valiantly in the wind, and there are footprints but no marks from the lunar modules. Now, all of this is presented as being totally irrefutable, but in actuality, there's answers for all of these. The glow of the moon washes out the stars. The flag had metal rods sewn into it, so it looks like it was blowing, because otherwise it would just hang straight down and not look that cool. And the lunar module's mass was distributed much wider than any of the astronauts' boots, and therefore didn't leave any impressions. But of course, what if the person who filmed the moon landings was such a master of the art? He could fake it better than anyone else could because of his filmmaking prowess, because he made a space movie a few years earlier. Now, this is maybe my favorite conspiracy theory ever, is that legendary filmmaker Stanley Kubrick was commissioned by the US government to film the moon landing because of his expertise on 2001: A Space Odyssey. This theory is outrageous and ultimately harmless. It's very fun. Stanley Kubrick was a notorious perfectionist and had already shown that he was capable of filming a perfectly believable setting in space, so naturally he'd be the government's perfect choice. There are some who believe The Shining mining is secretly a confessional allegory for Kubrick's involvement in the faking of the moon landing, with some theorists believing things like Danny Torrance wearing a Apollo rocket sweater that's got a little 11 on the bottom, or the Grady twins referencing the Gemini space program, or even the infamous all work and no play makes Jack a dull boy thing on the typewriter is supposed to be a nod with the ALL spelling out A11. It's very crazy, like red tape stuff. And if you're really interested, this theory is documented on the internet, and regardless of the truth, wildly entertaining. Personally, I think Kubrick did film the moon landing, but because he was such a notorious perfectionist, he insisted they film on location and made NASA develop a space program to fly to the moon to carry out his vision. Number 5, Roswell. So, if we're going to be discussing NASA conspiracy theories, only makes sense to start out one of the time-tested conspiracy theories before we get into the truly wild ones. So let's start with one of the most infamous conspiracies, that an alien craft landed in Roswell, New Mexico. It was 1947 when a rancher discovered bizarre debris on his property, thin, foil, and metal, not looking like anything he'd ever seen before, describing it as looking like it was part of a giant kite. After stories 2 weeks earlier of a civilian pilot, one Kenneth Arnold, broke headlines by telling the world he'd seen a flying saucer, the rancher told media that he suspected the debris he had found had belonged to a similar downed alien craft. Now the Air Force got wind of this and were interested in the story, naturally, and came to recover the debris off the property, leading to an infamous headline, RAAF captures flying saucer on ranch in Roswell region, and from there, conspiracy theories would run rampant over as to what was happening in Roswell, around it, and in the skies. No one really knew for sure what was happening. All anyone knew is that the government was being very cloak and dagger, hush hush about whatever it was that had crashed onto that farmer's property. Was it from a spacefaring race? Had the government really captured a downed alien craft? Were they using it to reverse engineer new technology? These were the wild questions everybody was asking amidst the story of the UFO crash landing. On top of that were whispers and stories of footage of an alien autopsy conducted at a secret research base, claims that there were leaked blueprints for US developed UFO technology. Those were some of the more colorful theories. Now the official story is that the debris recovered was from a weather balloon being used to record sound waves caused by Soviet nuclear testing, but for years the story was out and UFO and flying saucer fever was at an all-time high. This one event probably did more single-handedly to fuel conspiracy theory and government distrust on the subject of aliens more than anything else in history, and to this day is probably still one of the most famous cases of UFO sightings. Now whether or not you believe the official story is one thing, but we may never know the full story. And my friends, if you're looking for more stories of aliens, monsters, all things creepy, crawly, sticky, slimy, and things that go bump in the night, well baby, there's no better spot than Top 5 Scary, but you already knew that. Click through the archives, find something worth watching, and toss a subscribe our way and spend the whole day here. Number 4, NASA's a fraud. Okay, let's get into it. Among conspiracy theorists, there's a not totally unpopular theory that all NASA does, the National Aeronautics and Space Administration, is a totally bogus shell company that exists solely to burn up taxpayer money, working tirelessly to create a smokescreen propaganda show for the American public. And all of these rocket launches have all just been expensive charades, and all the imagery retrieved from the stars are just complicated CGI renderings, and all the astronauts are very well trained actors. And if you're detecting more than a bit of cynical sarcasm in my voice, it's because, wow, this one's a little out there even for me. I'm an avid enjoyer of a good conspiracy theory, but yeah, this one doesn't hold too much water. It's mostly popular on Twitter, and if you check out the hashtag NASA hoax after this video, you can scroll through some good stuff. The main arguments for this theory are similar to claims that the moon landing was faked, and put a pin in that because we will get into that later in the video in more detail. Believers of this theory claim that NASA uses wild special effects for photos from space, or their photos from inside rockets, and all their launches are fake, and I'll be honest, this one just seems like a lot of work for I'm not sure what kind of payoff. It actually seems like it would just be easier to build rockets and fly them into space than do all this stuff. I don't personally believe the moon landing was fake, but I can understand where that theory is coming from. Theoretically, why the organization would do it. It's important to the space race. But the whole agency being a fraud, well, I don't know. For one thing, they've really committed to this bit for the last 50 years, if that's true. Another is that NASA does a lot more than just launching rockets, and the innovations they've made for their astronauts benefit humanity as a whole. For example, the satellites they put into Earth's orbit, without that you wouldn't have your phone, you wouldn't have GPS software, even just little things like the advancements in computer software, everyday stuff like memory foam, freeze-dried food, water purification technology, they did make all of these things, which aren't fake. So I'm not gonna outright say I think this conspiracy might be a little out of this world, but I'm also gonna say if there really is no NASA, it is amazing they've managed to keep this under such tight wraps for so long.
Number 3, Bohemian Grove. A secret organization of people that control the world? Well, you know what, it turns out it actually does exist, and many of its members are powerful world leaders and titans of industries. The real action happens at Bohemian Grove, which appears to primarily exist as a place where the rich and powerful go to misbehave, according to the Washington Post. Bohemian Grove is a restricted 2,700-acre campground at 20601 Bohemian Avenue in Monte Rio, California, United States, belonging to a private San Francisco-based gentlemen's club known as, you guessed it, Bohemian Club. In mid-July of each year, Bohemian Grove hosts a more than 2-week encampment of some of the most prominent men in the world. The Bohemian Club's all-male membership includes artists and musicians, as well as many prominent business leaders, government officials, former US presidents, senior media executives, and people of power. Members may invite guests for either the Spring Jinx in June or main July encampments, schedule private day use events when it's not being used for club-wide purposes, and they are allowed at these times to bring spouses, family, and friends, although female and minor guests must be off the property by 9 or 10 o'clock at night. After 40 years of membership, the men earn Old Guard status, giving them reserved seating at the Grove's daily talks, as well as other perks. Former US President Herbert Hoover was inducted into the Old Guard on March 4th of 1953 because he had joined the club exactly 40 years prior. The club motto is, "Weaving spiders come not here," which implies that outside concerns and business deals are to be left outside, although discussion of business often occurs between pairs of members. Important political and business deals have been developed at the Grove, notably a Manhattan Project planning meeting that took place there in September of 1942, subsequently leading to the atomic explosive device. Those attending this meeting included Ernest Lawrence, J. Robert Oppenheimer, the S1 Executive Committee heads such as the presidents of Harvard, Yale, and Princeton, along with representatives of Standard Oil and General Electric, as well as various military officials. At the time, Oppenheimer was not an S1 member, although Lawrence and Oppenheimer hosted the meeting. Grove members take particular pride in this event and often relate the story to new attendees. Other behavior at the campground has led to numerous claims, with President Richard Nixon's comments from May 13th of 1971, calling it the most, insert F-word slur for gay here, goddamn thing you could ever imagine. I swear finding a way to say curse words without getting dinged by YouTube rules is like writing a crossword puzzle. Oh, to be a fly on the wall on any one of those meetings though. Number 2, poisoning booze during Prohibition. If you wake up with a hangover in today's day and age, you might be tempted to curse everything under the sun, to the tune of, who did this to me? And while the only correct answer is yourself, in the past you actually could have blamed the government. For over a decade, the United States barred the production and sale of drinking alcohol in what became known as the Prohibition era. An abstinence movement had existed in the United States since at least the 1830s, culminating in the adjustment of the 18th Amendment to the Constitution in January of 1920 to make drinking legal again. At the time, manufacturers of industrial alcohol had been mixing their product with dangerous chemicals for years prior to Prohibition. But between 1926 to 1933, the federal government pushed manufacturers to use stronger poisons to discourage bootleggers from turning the alcohol into moonshine. Officials reasoned that by mandating toxic additives into products, which would be converted to bootleg alcohol, the supply could effectively be, cut before consumption. Oftentimes folks were drinking industrial methanol, otherwise known as wood alcohol, which was a legal but extremely dangerous poison. The federal government had required companies to denature industrial alcohol to make it undrinkable as early as 1906. But during Prohibition, it ordered them to add quinine, methyl alcohol, and other toxic chemicals as a further deterrent. While increasing pressure from sellers and illegal importation of alcohol somewhat limited the supply of beverages, demand remained strong, with speakeasies and smuggling networks arising as quickly as they were squashed. Think of it like a really wild game of whack-a-mole. New York's 21 Club, a speakeasy, had an elaborate system of levers to hide the bar shelves and tip incriminating liquor bottles into the sewer in case of a riot. High demand for alcohol, accompanied by an unregulated black market, meant that sales of now toxic bootleg liquors continued despite the additional poison. By the end of the decade though, officials in the federal government adapted their strategies for enforcing Prohibition. In 1929, enforcement of Prohibition transferred from the Internal Revenue Service to the Justice Department, which then launched massive crackdowns on organized crime in cities like Chicago, New York, and Philadelphia. It wasn't until the repeal of the 18th Amendment in 1933 which I already mentioned, that the federal government reversed course on its temperance policies. By the end of Prohibition, more than 10,000 Americans had been killed by tainted booze though. Number 1. Canadian gaydar. So while Canada as a country legalized gay marriage a whole decade before the United States, we haven't always been the most progressive about it. In the 1960s, Canada was actually so paranoid that the government developed what they called a fruit machine, and today was when I learned the origin of the derogatory use of the word. I knew of its use in queer contexts before, but never like the origin. It was developed by a psychology professor with Carleton University, and the subjects were made to view sexy gay videos. The device then measured the diameter of the pupils of the eyes, perspiration, and pulse for a supposed erotic response. The machine was employed in the 1950s and 60s during a campaign to eliminate all gay men from the civil service, the RCMP, and the military. Thanks to the nonsense, a substantial number of workers did lose their jobs, believed to be in the 400-person range. Although funding for the project was cut off in the late 1960s, the investigations continued, and the RCMP collected files on 9,000 people who had been investigated. So the machine used a chair similar to that used by dentists. It had a pulley with a camera going towards the pupils, with a black box located in front of it that displayed pictures, ranging from, the mundane to sexually explicit photos of men and women. It had previously been determined that the pupils would dilate in relation to the amount of interest in the picture, in a technique termed the pupillary response test. Current Prime Minister Justin Trudeau offered an apology and compensation to those affected back in 2021, something I think was long overdue. Number 5. Project Sunshine. There was nothing 1950s and 60s America loved more than dropping big nuclear devices and watching them go kaboom. From a plan to nuke Alaska, which could still happen, to actually nuking space, America wasn't shy about seeing some scenery and thinking, I'll put a mushroom cloud there. But in these early days of nuclear weaponry, we still didn't really know the effects these nuclear tests had on the human body. We had estimates on how much radioactive strontium produced by tests would kill a person, but the exact effects of fallout on humans and human tissue were basically unknown and unstudied. And what we did know about levels of strontium-90 worried scientists at the time, and yet, the world continued to test weapons. Project Sunshine was a series of research studies that began in 1953 to figure out the impact of radioactive fallout on the world's population. The project was initially kept secret and only became known publicly in 1956. Commissioned jointly by the United States Atomic Energy Commission and USAF Project RAND, Sunshine sought to examine the long-term effects of nuclear radiation on the biosphere due to repeated nuclear detonations of increasing yields. With the conclusion from Project Gabriel that radioactive isotope SR90 represented the most serious threat to human health from nuclear fallout, Project Sunshine sought to measure the global dispersion of SR90 by measuring its concentration in the tissues and bones of the dead. Of particular interest was tissue from the young, whose developing bones had the highest propensity to accumulate SR90 and thus the highest susceptibility to radiation damage. It was in this environment that scientists at the Sunshine Conference, ergo the influence on the name, a conference that looked at the long-term effect of atomic weapons, argued in favor of sampling strontium fallout in humans to determine whether potentially damaging levels of it were present in different populations. In 1955, there was a meeting of the Atomic Energy Commission, which came up with some of the specifics of the testing and urged researchers to use their own contacts to discreetly get a hold of tissue and bone samples without disclosing the nature of the research being concluded, nor getting permission of the deceased. Dr. Willard Libby said in the transcription of that meeting, which was only released to the public in 1995, that it is a matter of prime importance to get them, and particularly in the young age group. So human samples are of prime importance, and if anybody knows how to do a good job of body snatching, they will be really serving their country. Sunshine recruited a worldwide network of agents to find recently deceased little ones and then take samples and even limbs that were collected without notification or permission. Around 6,000 corpses from 26 bone collection sites around the world were shipped under top secret conditions to the project headquarters in Chicago and to a satellite research office at Columbia University in New York. In one particularly grim example, a stillborn's legs were removed by researchers in the UK, and the mother was told that she couldn't dress the stillborn for the funeral to conceal from her that the legs had been taken for the project. I can't believe I just found out about this for the first time today. Number 4. Project MKUltra. This is easily the most well-known theory on today's list. I remember hearing jokes about it while I was growing up without really knowing exactly what anyone was talking about. So this was a CIA program called MKUltra, which had the stated goal of developing biological and chemical weapon capability during the Cold War. Secretly dosing individuals with LSD in order to test the potential effects of mind control. According to Stephen Kinzer, the CIA project was a continuation continuation of the work begun in World War II era Japanese facilities and Yahtzee concentration camps on subduing and controlling human minds. He wrote that MKUltra's use of mescaline on unwitting subjects was a practice that Yahtzee doctors had begun in the camps at Auschwitz and Dachau, and provided evidence of the continuation of a Yahtzee agenda, citing the CIA's secret recruitment of Yahtzee punishers and vivisectionists to continue experimenting on thousands of subjects. And Yahtzees were brought to Fort Detrick, Maryland, to instruct CIA officers on the lethal uses of sarin gas. Yeah, not shocked that this originated with the German bad guys. The project was headed by Sidney Gottlieb, but began on order of CIA Director Allen Dulles on April 13th of 1953. The project began during a period of what English journalist Rupert Cornwell described as paranoia at the CIA, when the US had lost its nuclear monopoly and fear of communism was at its height. Although the practice reportedly continued for 2 decades, it was launched before the drug movement of the 1960s made LSD into a popular counterculture symbol, and more mind control techniques were discovered. During the program, the CIA established front companies to work with more than 80 institutions, such as hospitals, prisons, and universities. In some cases, academic researchers were funded through grants from CIA front organizations, but were unaware that the CIA was using their work for these purposes. With these partnerships in place, the agency then ran experiments on subjects using hypnosis, and verbal and physical torment. Many of the human guinea pigs were mental patients, prisoners, addicts, and body-selling workers, or one agency put it, people who could not fight back. In areas under American control in the early 1950s in Europe and East Asia, mostly Japan, West Germany, and the Philippines, the CIA created secret detention centers so that the US could avoid criminal prosecution. The CIA captured people suspected of being enemy agents and other people it deemed expendable to undertake various types of punishment and human experimentation on them. The prisoners were interrogated while being administered psychoactive drugs, electroshocked, and subjected to extremes of temperature, sensory isolation, and more to develop a better understanding of how to destroy and control human minds. In one case, a mental patient in Kentucky was dosed with LSD continuously for 174 days. So invested in LSD was the CIA that some have labeled the agency responsible for the entire psychedelic movement in the United States. At least 2 American deaths can be attributed to this program, according to the Church Committee. And though that committee uncovered much of this shocking program, many of the top secret files were ordered to be destroyed in 1973 by CIA Director Richard Helms after the Watergate scandal. But enough remains to confirm one of the wildest, least ethical, most unbelievable stories from the history books. And while being given some free acid might sound like a great time to some folks, or at least the plot to a bad movie, dozens of people were left with permanent disabilities after secretly being subjected to this. Goodness gracious.
Number 3. Shallow Water, Cicada 3301. The Cicada 3301 experiment and conspiracy is a perplexing internet puzzle that has captivated the minds of countless online sleuths and conspiracy theorists. It all began in January 2012 when a mysterious image surfaced on various internet forums, including 4chan and Reddit. The image contained a message that challenged participants to solve a complex cryptographic style puzzle. This image ended up starting what would become a short-lived annual online treasure hunt. The initial image posted by Cicada 3301 included a message inviting individuals to embark on a quest to help their organization in finding highly intelligent individuals. Solving this puzzle led to a website with a list of coordinates around the world, prompting participants to physically visit these locations to discover further clues. These puzzles involved various cryptographic ciphers, riddles, and references to literature and obscure historical figures. For the next 2 years, on January 4th, Cicada 3301 would release a new puzzle. Each iteration increased in complexity. The puzzles required a deep knowledge of mathematics, literature, computer science, and music. Those who progressed through the stages were rewarded with additional clues and often found themselves invited to an even more private, exclusive community. Conspiracy theories surrounding Cicada 3301 began to grow dramatically, with many speculating its origins and purpose. Some theories suggest it's a recruitment tool for intelligence agencies like the CIA or M16, while others think it's a clandestine hacker group or even a social experiment conducted by a shadowy organization. Some participants have reported being approached by anonymous individuals claiming to be part of the group, adding an aura of mystery and intrigue. The question of who is behind Cicada 3301 and their ultimate goal remains unanswered to this day, at least to those who are outside of it. Number 2. The Deep End, the Voynich Manuscript. Often dubbed as the world's most mysterious book, the Voynich Manuscript has baffled scholars, cryptographers, and supernatural enthusiasts for centuries. This 15th century book is filled with peculiar, undecipherable text alongside intricate illustrations of unknown planets, plants, strange creatures, and unidentifiable symbols. A wide range of theories have emerged in an attempt to decode its origin and purpose. One of the leading theories believes that the manuscript is a hoax created to deceive anyone who finds it. The intricate, unique script has led some to believe it's an elaborate cipher, but despite extensive efforts from many people and linguistic experts, no one has been able to crack it. The drawings of unfamiliar plants have led some to think it might be a botanical or medical text containing knowledge for herbal remedies or alchemical recipes. Another theory suggests that the Voynich manuscript could be a genuine but now lost language. Some researchers believe that it may have been written in a natural language and then encoded for secrecy. This idea is supported by the manuscript's linguistic characteristics, which appear consistent with language patterns. However, without a key to decipher the text, this remains speculative. Also, there's the theory, my favorite theory by the way, that believe the book belonged to extraterrestrial beings who spoke a completely unknown language, and the drawings and recipe depictions represent objects and wildlife that humans have never experienced. Why did the aliens leave this book with us? I'm not sure, but if this book teaches us anything, it's that we certainly do not understand aliens in the slightest, so we definitely wouldn't be able to assume their motive and reasoning. If the book is of alien origin, it would contain mounds of insight for what alien planets or languages would look like. Number 1. Very deep. The Panopticon. The Panopticon conspiracy displays a thought-provoking exploration of surveillance, control, and the relationship between individuals and institutions. This conspiracy all started with a concept created by philosopher and social theorist Jeremy Bentham in the early 1700s. The Panopticon is an architectural design, essentially a prison structure where inmates are housed in a circular building with cells facing the center, in which a single looming watchtower stands. The standout nature of the design lies in the fact that the inmates can't see the guard in the tower, who, conversely, can see all of the inmates at once. This asymmetry creates a sense of constant surveillance, making prisoners behave as if they are being watched all the time, even if they're not. This design was intended to be a model for efficient and cost-effective incarceration. Over time, the Panopticon concept evolved beyond the realm of physical prisons. French philosopher Michel Foucault popularized the Panopticon as a metaphor for the modern surveillance society in his 1975 book Discipline and Punish. He explained that this design represents the power dynamic in modern institutions, where surveillance is pervasive and individuals will adjust their behavior because they assume they're being watched. It's not just about prisons. This reaches into the nature of control in schools, workplaces, and governments. The Panopticon conspiracy theory extends even further from this concept, suggesting that powerful institutions, both public and private, are continuously monitoring and controlling our lives, often without our awareness or consent. It encompasses concerns about surveillance capitalism, government surveillance programs, and the complete erosion of privacy in the digital age. In recent years, revelations about mass surveillance programs like PRISM and the Cambridge Analytica scandal have fueled suspicions that the Panopticon is not just a theoretical framework, but instead, it is in fact a reality in today's world. Advocates for privacy rights and civil liberties have sounded alarms about the extent of surveillance and its implications for personal freedom. While the Panopticon conspiracy can border on the paranoid, it reminds us to be mindful of the trade-offs we make between security and privacy in our modern technology-driven society. I mean, we all kind of know that we're being constantly monitored. I mean, some of y'all may not, because some comments show that you definitely have no knowledge of what a digital footprint is, but whatever. Whether the Panopticon is a metaphor for modern society or a genuine conspiracy, it raises important questions about the dwindling boundaries of privacy, the grand influence of institutions, and about the dynamics of power and surveillance in the digital age.